Good morning, chums. Welcome to P-Flax in the Morning, episode 4, TI13 edition. I thought today, since a couple of people that I've been chatting to here, we were talking about The Late Game, which is the show that I used to be involved in after the sort of main broadcast had finished. And I thought, let's do a little potted history of the late game and what it was and the different iterations of it and some funny stories about it, I guess. So the late game was something that I know Slacks had pitched to Valve for a while. And I think maybe over the years I'd mentioned something. We talked about this as well. The idea of having a show that wasn't part of the main broadcast. It wasn't with the analysts and players, and it wasn't serious. I mean, gameplay. So it was a show where maybe at the start of the day we talked about what was coming up and looked at yesterday in the standings, and we couldn't quite figure out how to make it work, because the problem with doing that is when the main show opens, of course, the first thing they do is talk about what's going to be happening that day. So didn't really fit like that. It was also going to be very hard to get guests for a morning show. It was going to be called, because I'd been doing this since TI3, I'd been doing P-Flax in the morning, and people were like, we should do that as a show. And the problem was, what do you talk about? You can't get guests because people are either still asleep, they don't want to do something first thing in the morning if they're working later in the evening. It was kind of tough. And if the players are playing that day, you're not going to get them. And if they're not, they won't be awake. So that was always a problem, was trying to figure that out. And then I guess it was either Slacks or someone at Valve that was like, we should do a late game, a late night show. And I had a vague idea that this was coming. And ahead of TI8, which was the Vancouver TI, the one where OG won, ahead of that TI, when I was hired, sorry, I'm just refilling my vague one. The guys, the hiring people at Valve, emailed me and were like, we want you to do a late night show. We're going to hire a pub near the venue. You'll be working with DJ Wheat, and you guys with Hotbid and Dakota and Slacks. You guys are going to be responsible. Actually, was Dakota at TI8? I think he might have been. I remember it was me, Slacks, Wheat, and Hotbid. I don't know if Dakota was there. Dakota, if you were or weren't there and I've forgotten you, I do apologize. But I definitely remember those four because we hung out in a room for 2 weeks just talking. So they said ahead of time, we want you guys to do a late night show. It's going to be about 45 minutes to an hour long after the main broadcast. It'll be at the pub. It'll be live. You can pre-record content for it if you want. Just have games and chats, and you can have 2 or 3 sets of guests. It'll be fun. And that first year, when we got there with this in mind, that we were just doing this casual late night show, a guy from Valve, I'm not going to out anyone from Valve that I know, but one of the guys at Valve was like, we've actually decided that we're also going to finish after the grand final with a big Tonight Show style stage show live in a theater with a band. You'll have guests on, you'll do some clowny shit, and then the team will come out and you'll interview the winning team. And I was like, holy shit, I am not mentally prepared for that at all. Didn't even have a suit because I was told just dress casual, we're going to be in a pub. As usual, I fail to bring a suit with me unless absolutely forced to, because I hate wearing a fucking suit. I don't mind wearing a jacket and stuff like that, but wearing a suit reminds me of when I actually used to have an office job that I detested. Same with a tie. Wearing a suit, it doesn't sit well with me. Occasionally, I think on the occasions when I've hosted an event, I have worn a suit, but it's purely because it's professional and it's requested. Otherwise, I would not wear a suit. I would never wear a suit. I don't mind a blazer, but I don't like wearing a full suit. That's just me. So I had to go shopping for a suit immediately. Panicked because I was like, I've never done anything like this in my life. DJ Wheat obviously had a lot of experience with hosting and live stage stuff, so thank goodness he was there because I would not have been able. I had never hosted anything in my life at this point. So I was just there as the Andy Richter. You know what I mean? I was just like the clown. So I was like, cool. So we did the show, and it was a lot of fun. And the grand final for TI8 was obviously it was either going to be OG or PSG LGD, and we were very, very nervous. Wait, it was PSG LGD. Am I going absolutely insane? TI8. TI8. Hang on. I am so stupid. I'm checking on my PC. Just give me a sec. I'm not going mad here, am I? Yeah, PSG LGD. What's wrong with my brain? So yeah, wait, was Dakota there? I see me, Slacks, Wheat, Ken. Yeah, Dakota wasn't there. Anyway, so it was going to be PSG LGD or OG, and no offense to the Chinese teams, but I was very nervous about having to do the whole show that we'd designed with a team that didn't speak English via a translator, and the audience would have been a lot of Chinese fans as well. And our show had BSJ and Kyle as guests, and was all kinds of stupid, chat with like it was all going to be just goofy stuff with basically an NA crowd. I think we had Bulldog on as a guest as well, remotely. That would have not played well with the Chinese crowd. Like, I don't know if they would have been into it at all. They just wanted to see PSG LGD, I'm sure. And it would have been really bad. And then the interviews would have been quite awkward because, of course, it would have been through a translator. It would have kind of ruined the whole pace of the show. So I have personally never cheered for any team in a situation like that. I have never been a bigger OG fan than I was that night because I was thinking about the late game purely selfishly. Anyway, so TI8 happens, and it was great, and the show was great, and it was a huge relief to have done it because I'd never done anything like that. And working with DJ Wheat was a pleasure, and working with Ken and Slacks was a pleasure, of course. And then it was a really fun show. TI9 in Shanghai, we want to do late game again. I was like, cool, but we're not going to do the big final stage show because, it's going to be in China. It's going to be difficult. I was like, fair enough. So we did it at a bar. This bar was attached to a hotel. So we would have to travel from our hotel to the hotel where the bar was to do the late game. It was unbelievably hot. And this bar was themed around the English pub. It was not. It was not like an English pub. It was like a Disney-fied version of an English pub. They didn't even have cider, for goodness sake. Ridiculous. And it was pretty scuffed because they had 3 late games. They liked the late game so much, they decided we're going to do 3. We're going to do one for Russia, one for for English language, and one for China. So China had a late game. It was like 2 hours long, 2.5 hours long. It was hosted by BBC, who's like this legendary Chinese presenter. And the Russian one was in a pub just across from ours, identical show. Ours and theirs were basically the same show. There's like host and a co-host, or like dual host, and you'd have guests on, have a chat and have a couple of beers. And that was fine. But they wanted me to go from our late game to the Chinese late game. I don't know if you can find this on YouTube. I'm sure it's somewhere. But I don't really know. But essentially, I was sent to the Chinese broadcast as a representative of the EN scene. And the Russian guy was there from the Russian scene. And we had to sort of compete against the Chinese host. And the game was, there was a wooden box with a miniature pig in it. And we had to pick a flag for a team. And to show our support for them, we had to tempt the pig over towards us with treats. And if he came to our corner, it was good luck for that team for the next day. And we personally, whoever had tempted the pig, would win a treat, like some food, some Chinese delicacy. And the loser would have to eat a sort of what might be considered more of an acquired taste-based Chinese delicacy, something that they thought the Westerners would balk at. So I won the first night there because I didn't make a noise. I just put the food down and made quite a nice face at the pig. And he was like, well, you're making the least noise. I'll go that way. And everyone else was going like that. And I thought, he's not going to be into that. He came over and ate. I won. And I had very diplomatically chosen a Chinese team as my flag. The crowd loved that. Come on, I know how to work a Chinese crowd. Everyone knows that. And then I went back to our show, and Dakota was there. He was like, "Oh, you're back," like 5 minutes before the end of the show. I was like, so essentially, me and Dakota write this show, and we write it for the two of us. And then I spend 40 minutes on the Chinese late game, and then come back for the last 5 minutes of our show. I was like, why don't we just I'll do that bit, and then we'll do our show. They're like, no, it's all going to be at the same time. I was like, okay. So in the end, we started sending other people. I think I sent Ken one night. So I can't remember, somebody else went another night. We just sent them over. But like, they won't know. They don't know any of who the EN talent are, so just send anyone over. Because I wanted to do a show with Dakota, so we did that, and that was fine. And TI10 obviously was the cancelled, and then Bucharest, so everything was kind of fucked up. Late game that year was just in basically a tent. It was like a stage, a little sound stage. If you've ever been to an outdoor festival or like some kind of a fair or something, and there's a band playing, they have a raised, it's always black wood with almost sort of, looks like scaffolding, and it'll have a top for lighting and sound rigs and stuff like that. It was that, and it was October, and it was Romania, and I was severely underdressed. I had no idea. It was quite warm in the UK. I didn't pack a single jumper, no hoodies, no coats, nothing, which was ridiculous. I just didn't realize how cold it was going to be. It was freezing. And we were out there, very cold, and of course then COVID, people started getting COVID. So I left early. I said to Valve, I said, look, Cap caught COVID, JJ got COVID. I've been hanging out and playing board games with these guys every night, talking to players. I've been hanging out in the lobby, chatting to everybody. I cannot spend 10 days here. I've got kids to look after. There's way too much on the line here. I really need to go. And to their eternal credit and my eternal thanks, they were like, that is fair enough. So I left. And I got the first flight that I could home. And thank God, because I know that Cap and JJ were stuck out there for like 10 days or 2 weeks or something like that. It was an absolute nightmare. And as I understand it, the Chinese teams had to spend like 6 months in Indonesia or something waiting to clear to come back into China. It's incredible. We kind of forget how weird that time was. But that late game was genuinely quite a lot of fun while it lasted. But obviously I wasn't there for the final, and it was so cold. It was so cold. So that was Bucharest. Then in Singapore, the late game was probably the most low-key we've done. It was just a desk to one side, and at the end of the day, they would come to us, and we would just sort of chat. It was me, and I basically roped Slacks in as my co-host because I'd really wanted to do it with him for ages. And he came in, and we just sort of got people on and clowned around and asked dumb questions. I'd say the best one was we had Puppy and Crystalis on, and Puppy did his Bane impression and stuff. That was genuinely very funny. But it was pretty low-key, and we didn't have a grand final. We didn't do a late-game grand final. Last year was me and Jenkins, and that was the most fun I've had working at a TI for some time, because working with Andrew was just hilarious fun. I'd hung out with Andrew a lot at Dream Leagues and TIs and stuff like that, but I don't think when you work with someone, you get to know them pretty well. And especially when you work with them in a situation where you're going to be relying on each other on a live show to be funny and entertaining, you need to know that you can depend on someone. I knew he'd be gold, right? You just have to just set Andrew up, just get him in position, and and away he goes, and he's just innately funny. One of the funniest, naturally funniest people I think I've ever met. So working with him was an absolute pleasure. And he's an idea machine. Very, very quick, very, very sharp, great at coming up with ideas. And when we were pitched the late game final, the stage show again, I was really happy because obviously we'd done it before, so I knew what to expect. The theatre was beautiful. Anyone was there. I hope you guys had a great time. We had a lot of fun doing it. The night before, when we were doing rehearsals, Andrew just came up with this idea. He was like, we should get an exercise bike. We need an exercise bike, and we'll put Arvo on the bike, and he'll be out of breath, and we'll make him do an interview like he did at TI. I was like, that's gold. So we did that. We put poor old Arvo on that exercise bike, almost killed him. That's Andrew. That was working with Andrew. He was just a very, very quick guy. Comes up with an idea, and Valve were like, we'll get you an exercise bike. It's just like that. It was really fun. So I'm sad to see the back of it. I am very sad that we don't get another late game. But look, like I said, we got 5 late games and 2 stage shows. And I think those are, in terms of things I've done in my career, you could call it that, those are 2 of my proudest moments was being involved in those shows and seeing how they turned out. And last year in particular felt really fun. And I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So that was a brief history of the late game. In terms of stuff that went wrong, I don't think there was any really bad technical problems on any of them. And in terms of like drama or problems, I mean, the only problem I could think was in China, every single time we went to the pub, they had like 4 members of staff behind the bar there. And every night we'd come in, and every night they seemed surprised to see us. We did like 7 late games or something like that. Every single night they were like, "Can we help you?" I was like, "Yeah, we're on the show." They were like, "Okay." So, "Can we have a beer, please?" They were like, "We'll have to check with the manager." I was like, "What is happening?" So every single night they'd have to run it by the manager, and the manager would check with his manager, and he'd make a phone call, and then they'd serve us a beer. It was like, that's just kind of China is kind of like that sometimes. So that was the only thing that it was just like, what is going on? That was kind of funny. And then TI8, just before we came out, we were behind the curtain. We could hear the audience. I'd never done anything like this. Come onto a stage and tried to be funny and entertaining. Never really done that before, especially just two of us. And I had a big joke that I had to land that we'd rehearsed. The thing with BSJ where we convinced him his ex-girlfriend was going to be there. I had that in my mind, and I'd never done anything like this before. And I was like, okay, we're just going to do this. Just before we went live, me and Wheat are like looking at each other. We had a hug, and we were like, all right, mate, let's fucking do this. And as soon as the curtains opened, the crowd just goes, it was packed theatre. Everybody was so hyped. Just at the TI8 grand final. The noise was unbelievable. Like, you've heard someone yelling at you. Now imagine a couple of thousand people yelling at you. The noise is unbelievable. When you can feel it like a wave, like a sound wave hits you. And then when the joke with BSJ landed, the audience laughter was so instant and so pure. It was like, bow, like that. It's kind of addictive. You can see why people get addicted to that, because it's such a bizarre feeling. Anyway, this year I'm doing the player interviews and stuff like that. Expect to see me doing loser interviews, exit interviews as they're called. I don't mind doing that. I think it's, I've been around the block. It's a good idea for someone like me to do the exit interview. I think it's fair. I did them last year and I was fine doing them. We'll do them this year. Wish the players well. Try to lift their spirits. Anyway, I will see you guys tomorrow. Cheers for watching and have a blessed day.